Keanu Reeves lost his girlfriend in a car accident, his father when he was 3, his best friend when he was 29, and his daughter before she was even born. He didn't say anything at all. He showed forgiveness. He went on. However, he was unable to forgive one individual, one treachery that was too painful. It was 60 years before he could utter the name aloud. Even his closest friends were taken aback when he did, as the person Keanu detested the most wasn't who they had anticipated. Everyone adored the person. On September 2, 1964, Keanu Reeves was born in Beirut. The city was on the verge of anarchy at the moment. It would be destroyed by a 15-year civil war, a little more than 10 years later. Patricia Taylor, his mother, was a British costume designer. Samuel Reeves, his father, was a geologist and Hawaiian Chinese. However, their aspirations for a future together came to an end when Keanu was just 3 years old. His father left and never returned. Everything changed in that instant. His early years were a haze of relocations, transformations, and fresh starts that ended abruptly. Hanu had already lived in 4 different countries by the time she was 10 years old. Sydney, New York, Toronto, and Beirut after that. No true friendships, no roots, just continual movement. Every location felt transitory, despite his mother's best efforts to start their lives over. It wasn't made any simpler by school. Due to her undiagnosed dyslexia, Hanu struggled every day to read and write. He attended 4 different high schools in succession from 1979 to 1984. Ainedale Secondary Alternative, Dalal College, Atobekoke School of the Arts, and finally a performing arts institution. He was unable to keep up. His teachers labeled him unfocused or sluggish. There were a lot of D's and F's on report cards. He left school at the age of 17. He appeared to have failed. But in reality, it was the first step toward discovering acting, which was what he really fit with. Things weren't much more stable at home. A succession of men who appeared to be potential father figures were brought in by his mother's love life, but none of them stayed. When Keanu was about 11 years old, one of them, director Paul Aaron, married Patricia. He even made an attempt to get Keanu interested in theater. Although it ended in divorce, it seemed as though he might have had someone. It was the same pattern over and over. Another farewell, a new man, a moment of peace. Keanu discovered early on that he could only rely on himself. He had a final encounter with his biological father when he was 13. Hawaii's Kauai is where it took place. It had been 10 years since they last saw one another. The reunion wasn't cordial. No hugs or excuses were exchanged. Only a low-key, uncomfortable meeting set up by family. Samuel had been adrift, battling substance abuse and precarious employment. Keanu never saw or spoke to him again after the meeting ended without any genuine connection. Keanu was 20 years old and attempting to get into the acting industry by 1984. In order to cover events and interview children for local television, he accepted a position with CBC as a youth correspondent. Even though it only earned $200 per week, it allowed him to access the entertainment industry, which was what he truly desired. He was constantly trying out behind the scenes for every part he could find. His name, however, was an additional barrier. Keanu was advised by agents that he was too ethnic. In Hollywood, it wouldn't work. They requested that he alter it. He therefore went by Casey Reeves or Casey Reeves at auditions for 2 years. He detested it. Keanu's name translates to cool breeze over mountains. He was a person because of that. He stopped using false names in 1987 and made the decision to be himself once more, even if receiving fewer roles was the consequence. In same year, he was cast in River's Edge. Despite its small size, it was genuine and belonged to him. Keanu had been a goaltender for the Diesel College hockey team years prior. Nothing could pass him, thus they dubbed him the Wall. He was composed, determined, and unflappable. His squad won a championship in 1982, thanks to his great goaltender numbers of 2.1 goals against average. Later, his acting would reflect that same serene focus. In 1984, while he was fighting for his life, he needed that focus. He was posing as a cool man at the beach in a corny Coca-Cola commercial at one point. For it, he earned $2,500. The next he knew, he was giving a free nighttime performance of Shakespeare. At a little theater in Toronto, he performed as Mauricio in Romeo and Juliet. He put his all into it. He received accolades from critics, but it didn't cover the expenses. He was simultaneously balancing desire and humiliation. He was given a small part in the low-budget Canadian television series, Hanging, in that same year. He portrayed Wolf, a disturbed teenager. It went horribly wrong, even though it was intended to be his big break. He gave a tight performance, Lines slipped his mind. Simple scenes required several takes to get right. They wrote him out after he only appeared in 4 episodes. It severely damaged his confidence. He even contemplated returning to hockey instead of acting. Instead, though, he persisted. He learned a lesson from that failure that he never forgot. It is impossible to fake. You must be genuine, show up, and be ready. He went on to become one of the most adored actors in the world because of that same genuineness. In 1986, Reeves landed his breakthrough role in the gloomy, unsettling movie, River's Edge. It was inspired by a true murder that occurred in 1981 and rocked a small California town. Reeves portrayed Matt, a reserved adolescent who had to choose whether to report his friend for the murder of his girlfriend. The movie didn't mince words. It demonstrated the numbness and disengagement of youth. It was a bold move for Keanu's first major part, but he succeeded. His ability to remain composed and aloof on screen, like to a vintage noir investigator, was lauded by critics. He didn't scream or weep. Instead, he simply refrained from expressing his intense feeling. His signature would later be that control. Keanu became well known after the movie won Best Picture at the Independent Spirit Awards. Then something unexpected happened. Everything changed with Bill and Ted's Fantastic Adventure in 1989. It was full of time travel, noisy and ridiculous. Ted, a kind but naive high school slacker who merely wanted to pass the time, was portrayed by Keanu. He was accidentally cast alongside Alex Winter, who played Bill. Originally envisioned as dorky metalheads, the characters' roles were changed by the creators after they saw Keanu and Alex together. They became closest friends in real life because of their strong chemistry. The film nearly didn't happen. During production, the original studio filed for bankruptcy. It was salvaged just in time by another company. No one believed it would succeed. The director was so afraid it would fail that he even left town on the first weekend. However, viewers adored it. In theaters, the $10 million film brought in $40 million. Keanu became a comedic star overnight. People were reciting the movie nonstop. Phrases like "party on dudes" and "be excellent to each other" were ingrained in the culture. Ted was straightforward but compassionate, and Keanu portrayed him with complete authenticity. He was lovable because of that. Critics who had previously disregarded him now began to take notice. They saw that he had a unique quality. On screen, he was captivating. Breakfast Cereal, a TV series, a cartoon, and a sequel were all inspired by the film. It demonstrated to studios that Keanu could carry a movie, which was more significant. Everything altered as a result. Although he became well known thanks to Bill and Ted, Keanu wasn't limited to comedies. To demonstrate his range, he took on serious parts around the same period. He co-starred with such greats as Glenn Close and John Malkovich in the 1988 historical drama, Dangerous Lions, which was set in France in the 18th century. The film made $34.7 million. Although it cost $14 million to make, it received 7 Oscar nominations, including 1 for Best Picture. Keanu portrayed an up-and-coming music educator, entangled in a labyrinth of deceit and exploitation. It demonstrated his ability to handle complex characters, and was a significant step up from playing Ted. In 1989, he followed it up with Ron Howard's touching comedy drama, Parenthood. Keanu portrayed a sweet yet troubled young man who was seeing a single mother. The cast featured well-known comedians, Rick Moranis and Steve Martin. Among them, Keanu was competitive. By choosing intelligent, somber characters to intersperse his popular comedies, The Picture, which was based on true family stories, received 2 Academy Award nominations. Keanu gained reputation in the film industry. Ted, however, never truly abandoned him. It was more than just a humorous role. It influenced how viewers perceived Keanu. Ted was polite and honest, but he lacked courage and intelligence. Moral boundaries were never crossed by him. He was kind-hearted but awkward. Keanu's trademark was that blend. Unlike other prominent men, he was unique. He wasn't attempting to be slick or macho. He could be identified with. He had the feel of a true man. People were able to relate to him because of this. Keanu maintained that image even decades later. He resisted turning the characters gloomy or edgy when he returned for Bill and Ted Face the Music in 2020. Keanu refused to introduce defects, despite the writer's wishes. He insisted that they wouldn't do it. He was correct. Despite being middle-aged fathers, Ted and Bill remained innocent and silly. It wasn't simply the role that required that feeling of decency. It belonged to Keanu. A weird event occurred in 1991. A cult classic was created from a film about bank robbers who surf Point Break wasn't your typical action movie. On a budget of $24 million, it earned over $83.5 million and starred Keanu Reeves and Patrick Seas. But there was something no one anticipated beyond the gunfights, waves, and excitement. The movie alluded to a strong emotional bond between the two male stars beneath all the action. It was then hailed by critics as the best action film ever about gay women. It was even referred to be a wet western by some. People were unable to stop watching it, whatever it was. Reeves portrayed FBI undercover agent Johnny Utah. Seas portrayed Bod, the calm surfer in charge of a gang of bank robbers. At first glance, it appeared to be police battling criminals. Beneath that, however, was an odd tension. A strong connection that was more like want than loyalty. The camera followed them around. It was a personal act. The surfing word Point Break itself seems to be a metaphor for the conflict between duty and desire. The Fast and the Furious would use the same storyline years later. However, Point Break was the first to use heat to do this. Reeves made a huge left turn that same year. In the film My Own Private Idaho, he co-starred with River Phoenix. It was an odd, eerie tale about male sex workers. Mike, a narcoleptic hustler looking for a place to call home, was portrayed by Phoenix. Reeves portrayed Scott, a wealthy young man who lived on the streets before going back to his affluent lifestyle. Despite only costing $2.5 million, the movie generated nearly $8 million and contributed to the new queer cinema movement. Phoenix took home the Venice Best Actor award. Everyone was taken aback by Reeves' audacious role. He kissed another man on film at the height of his fame, and he never once attempted to justify it. The film was painfully beautiful, honest, and poetic. It blended street life with Shakespeare. It made use of fractured time frames and dream sequences. It wasn't intended to be popular. It was designed to make a statement. It also made a strong statement on sexuality, identity, and class. It was added to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2024. It was now an indelible part of history. But not everyone was applauding as his star rose. His detractors turned against him. He gave the closest thing to a performance in his career, according to Empire magazine, which made fun of him. According to CNN, he lacked talent. His propensity of uttering "whoa" and his calm, rambling delivery turned into jokes. Reviewers said that he was receiving roles that were unworthy of him. They made sure everyone knew that they didn't think he had earned it yet. Then, in 1994 came Speed. When Reeves chopped off his long hair, the studio went into a panic. Director John Diont maintained it was the correct thing to do, despite their belief that fans wouldn't know him. Fox almost put off the movie's release. During production, funds ran out. Rough storyboards were used to test audiences on a few sequences, but the audience showed no interest. They adored it. Fox increased their funding, bringing the total to $30 million. The movie debuted at the top of the charts. It earned $350 million globally and $121 million in the US. It earned more than The Rock did. It came very close to defeating Die Hard. Despite being an established blockbuster star, Reeves declined the sequel. Speed 2, Cruise Control, the sequel, was a huge failure, losing more than $100 million. Not every gunshot was seen on TV, but Reeves had escaped one. Reeves starred in Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. On paper, the movie looked fantastic. Large cast, large budget. However, it became a joke when Reeves tried to seem British. He collaborated with coaches. Despite his intense work, the accent sounded stiff, unnatural, and unpleasant. Coppola later said that despite Reeves' best efforts, he was unable to unwind. The performance gained notoriety. It is still used as an example of how to avoid doing an accent in acting classes. That one detail tormented him, despite the film's success. But River Phoenix had the biggest impact on Reeves. While filming I Love You to Death in 1990, they had first met. They bonded. Phoenix nearly turned me down when My Own Private Idaho was casting. Reeves would have none of it. To personally persuade him, he mounted his Harley and traveled more than 1,300 miles, from Toronto to Florida. When Phoenix said, "I'll do it if you do it," so they both did. In Hollywood, such commitment wasn't common. Then everything changed on Halloween night in 1993. Phoenix overdosed on drugs and slumped outside the Viper Room. Before assistants could arrive, he passed away. At the time, he was just 23. Reeves was filming Speed at the time. Sandra Bullock has a vivid memory of it. She claimed to have observed his silent grief. "He couldn't conceal the fact that he's quite private," she remarked. "He was transformed by the anguish. It was the kind of grief that you don't ignore." The entire filming schedule had to be rearranged by director Jan Diont. On several days, Reeves was too damaged to perform. He grew silent and reclusive. Keanu Reeves, the future action star, was the title of a profile published by Entertainment Weekly. However, it had a story of an actor who was lugging a large object. Bullock said he saw a grief that never went away in his eyes. Reeves' loss didn't start with Phoenix's passing. A pattern was in the midst of it. As a teenager, he had already lost his father. He had experienced abandonment before. Phoenix was meant to be unique, a brother and closest friend. Something broke open when he was gone. Phoenix, according to Reeves, was worn out. He was leaving movie after movie. It takes a lot, he clarified, and it did in both the heart and the head. That realization influenced Reeves's life. He drew away from the clamor of Hollywood. His private life became well known. The man who once sped across the nation on a motorcycle to save a movie role now wouldn't discuss Phoenix at all. In interviews, he frequently pauses in the middle of questions. At one point, he trailed off after saying, He looked down and grinned. That was it. He never divulges the specifics. Once he said, I will never talk about them. They're too intimate. He doesn't seek attention by using Phoenix's passing. His past is not exploited. However, the echo of something that never healed can be heard in that quiet, and in that refusal to provide an explanation. A level of devotion that most celebrities don't exhibit. In 1997, Keanu Reeves surprised the film industry by declining Speed 2 Cruise Control. On a $30 million budget, the first Speed had made $350 million. After seeing the script, Reeves declined Fox's offer of millions to reprise his role as Jack Traven. The film was set on a cruise ship, which was his explanation. It's aboard a cruise ship and is called Speed. According to reports, cruise ships hardly ever reach 30 mph, compared to the bus in the first film, which had to remain above 50. That was slower. Reeves thought the whole idea was flawed. The urgency and suspense that made the original movie so successful will vanish. The refusal was not taken lightly by Fox. Reeves was actually placed on a 14-year blacklist. He didn't collaborate with Fox at all between 1997 and 2008. The penalty was severe and intimate. They even circulated reports that he was taking his rock band, Dog Star, on tour while skipping movies. They had no idea that Reeves would become even more prosperous while in exile. He became a cultural hero and earned $250 million for his role in the Matrix trilogy. Ultimately, Fox lost out on one of the biggest stars of the following 10 years. Instead, Reeves did something that made his decision much more implausible. He traveled to Canada to play Hamlet on stage in Winnipeg, not to film another film. In a small theater, he exchanged a popular sequel for a Shakespeare play. He didn't care that he only received a small portion of what he would have received from Speed 2. I want to do something meaningful, he told GQ. Reeves chose purpose in a world where most performers strive after wealth and celebrity. That was practically unheard of in the 90s. Then came the conclusive evidence that he had been correct all along. Speed 2 was a complete failure. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a mere 4% rating. It was criticized for being painful to see, slow, and ridiculous. It was considered stupid even by children. From $100 million to $160 million, its budget skyrocketed. However, it only earned $48.6 million people in the US. It was nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Actress, and Worst Supporting Actor at the Razzies, and won Worst Remake or Sequel. Reeves had both financially and literally escaped a sinking ship. In fact, being blacklisted freed him. Reeves experimented with new roles, without the influence of large studio politics. He collaborated with fearless filmmakers, such as the Wachowskis. His life was transformed by The Matrix, yet he later acted in other movies as a dark or dysfunctional character. He surprised viewers by portraying an abusive husband in The Gift. He even took a pay reduction to work with such greats as Gene Hackman and Al Pacino. Money was no longer his goal. Growth was what he was after. Fox eventually lifted the prohibition by 2008. Reeves didn't need them by then, though. He was now regarded as one of Hollywood's most prestigious figures. There was a crazy backstory to even The Matrix. Neo didn't initially choose Reeves. Not even the second or third was him. He was the last option. Everybody was tried by the producers. Sandra Bullock, Will Smith, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Johnny Depp, and Nicolas Cage. They offered to recast Neo as a woman for Bullock because they were so desperate. Each of the well-known names declined one by one. Yes, Reeves replied, and history is the outcome. With a $60 million budget, The Matrix made $469 million when it came out in March 1999. It received an 8.7 out of 2 million votes on IMDb. It took home 4 Academy Awards. It was the first movie to use bullet time. Sunglasses and long jackets were once again fashionable. People began discussing the red pill and simulations. It was more than a movie. It was a worldwide occurrence. However, The Matrix also faced difficulties. The Wachowskis had a profound concept for the movie. The original script did not depict humans as batteries. They served as processors in a live supercompute, a neural network. The studio changed it because they believed viewers wouldn't understand it. Rather, people were transformed into power cells, a notion that defied scientific logic. Hollywood wanted it to be easy. The film thereby lost a level of complexity. Some claim that a much more contemplative version of the story was lost on us. The sequels followed. Both Revolutions and The Matrix Reloaded, which came out in 2003, were huge hits. Globally, Reloaded made $739.4 million. Although the euphoria was short-lived, it broke R-rated box office records. Fans were perplexed by the plots. Spectators were stunned by the notorious architect spectacle. No true answers came from Revolutions. The conclusion seemed pointless. The audiences left feeling let down. Later on, Keanu said that he could see why people were angry. Many admirers felt that the original charm was destroyed by the sequels. The criticism was particularly harsh for Reeves. Reeves experienced yet another difficult period following the sequels. Once more, people began making fun of his acting. His performances were deemed wooden by critics. He was viewed as an anomaly. It wasn't helped by movies like The Last Time I Committed Suicide, Chain Reaction, and Feeling Minnesota. He was beginning to lose the career boost that The Matrix had given him. He drifted for more than a decade. Hollywood has moved on. Then, in 2014, John Wick appeared out of nowhere. And he was back in a flash. An action hero of a new kind. Cool, silent, and lethal. Once more, audiences adored him. Reeves had weathered every storm. Failure, exile, and rejection. He converted everything into gasoline. His path was not limited to film. It was about remaining loyal to himself. He left while others engaged in the Hollywood game. He found other avenues after being blacklisted by studios. And he returned stronger, after the world lost up on him. Keanu Reeves never thought that someone he had once trusted would be the source of his greatest Hollywood regret. He was abruptly locked into a film he had never agreed to shoot in 2000, just after The Matrix's enormous success. The Watcher was its name, and something didn't feel right when he saw the deal. His signature was there, legally tying him to the project, even though he was certain he had declined it. It wasn't his signature. It was fake. Even worse, a stranger wasn't the one who did it. It came from a buddy or someone close to him, someone in his own inner circle. This wasn't a straightforward error or miscommunication. It was prearranged. This individual utilized his private documents to ensnare him in a movie he didn't want to produce. Keanu was already coping with mental distress in his personal life at the time. Jennifer Sim was dealing with her own problems, and their relationship was tumultuous. Keanu had two options when confronted with this betrayal. He might challenge the contract in court and allow the dispute to continue in the open, or he may carry it out in private and keep his peace. The second option was his choice. Despite his gut telling him no, he went ahead and filmed The Watcher. The movie was a complete failure. It only brought in $29.1 million, a budget of $30 million. Rotten Tomatoes scored it an awful 11%, and critics ripped it apart. It makes sense why Keanu's performance appeared rigid and disinterested. He had no desire to be present. He later acknowledged that the film was a low point in his career, and referred to it as awful. It was never discovered who had faked his name. However, Keanu's approach to things changed after that. Agreements, friendships, and confidence. Even a famous actor can become susceptible when others close to him choose to take advantage of him. As this bitter lesson demonstrated, his personal life was collapsing at the same time. At a party for his band Dogar in 1998, Keanu first met Jennifer Sim. She was employed by filmmaker David Lynch, and was only 26 years old. They clicked right away. After a year of living together, Jennifer became pregnant with their daughter. Her name was going to be Ava Archer Sim Reeves. However, Jennifer went into early labor on Christmas Eve 1999. At 8 months, Ava was stillborn. It turned into their darkest period, when it should have been their happiest. The sadness was too much to bear. Jennifer was treated for postpartum depression and required medical assistance. It hurt too much. In the weeks following Ava's passing, their relationship started to deteriorate. Keanu never really left her side, but he kept his distance. They remained near each other. He wished to aid in her recovery, but Jennifer resorted to drinking and partying. She went into a spiral. Nevertheless, they had started to get back in touch in early 2001. They were making another attempt. They even got together for brunch in San Francisco on April 1. She was gone the following day. Jennifer attended a gathering at Marilyn Manson's residence that evening. Manson had someone drive her home after she got intoxicated. However, she made the decision to drive herself back later that evening, for reasons that no one can entirely comprehend. On Kahena Boulevard, her Jeep crashed. She didn't have a seatbelt on. On impact, she passed away. She was 28. The following morning, Keanu called the coroner's office to see whether she was there after failing to get through to her. Dark information were discovered during the crash investigation. Jennifer's automobile had 2 prescription drugs. She had $2 bills with white powder folded up as well. Her mother informed the authorities that she had been dealing with pain and sadness following a previous vehicle accident. A month prior, she had also lost her grandfather. All of that sorrow accumulated. Nothing could reverse the consequences of what had already occurred. Yet her mother's lawsuit against Marilyn Manson was unsuccessful. Keanu remained silent for several years. His career cooled. Following The Matrix, he starred in a number of unsuccessful films: Henry's Game, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and The Lake House. Hollywood had all but written him off by 2014. People believed his time was over when he turned 50. Next up was John Wick. Nobody anticipated it becoming popular. It had a modest budget of approximately $20.30 million. Even though Lionsgate didn't purchase the movie until 2 months prior to its release, it was a huge hit. It earned $86 million. It was praised by critics. Keanu was a fantastic fit for the character. Calm, quiet, and lethal. The role was developed around him by the writer and director. The conversation was brief and centered on his presence. It was successful. People's perceptions of him changed. Keanu's second life in Hollywood began with that film. As of right now, the entire John Wick franchise has brought in over $1 billion. It is anticipated that he will play the role in at least 6 films. It turned out to be his most lucrative role to date. However, not everyone was kind to his accomplishment. Matthew Perry disparaged Keanu at random in his memoir in 2022. He asked why great stars like Heath Ledger and River Phoenix have passed away, yet Keanu Reeves is still with us. It wasn't a joke. As Perry discussed the passing of Chris Farley, he doubled down and brought up Keanu once more. The public's response was immediate and severe. It was incomprehensible to everyone. Perry and Keanu had never collaborated or interacted. Perry made an effort to clarify. He claimed to be a fan and to have chosen the name at random. In reality, nobody purchased it. It was an unexpected, resentful, and personal attack. Keanu remained silent. He never does. He's always done it that way. Silent power. Even when he faces upheaval from the outside world. Keanu Reeves has survived heartbreak, murder, betrayals, and public taunts. He does not snap. In front of cameras, he doesn't crumble. He simply continues. By persevering through what would have broken most people, he has established a profession and a legacy.